set their goals and do their transitional plan into that.
Lamiel, can you also like refresh us a little bit? You we know you got the skills. A lot of people just
Okay.
came on.
All right. So then,
I wanted you to also tell us about your fundraising activities that you've done over the holidays for years, please.
Okay, so for the last 5 years,
okay.
I have typically through sort of a grassroots foundation that I started called L Power, provided Thanksgiving and Christmas dinners to other families that were in need on an ongoing basis. Um, while we were in our home, we did weekly donating of food to those in the community who could just come by the house. And basically, we have something called Recycle on Facebook for the community that I live in. So when I had extra, we would post that, and then people could inbox me and just say, yes, I'd like that, yes, we need that, and we would box those things up for them to just come and take without having to have any interaction with us. um, and then the major fundraising that we've done through L Power was for children who had been sexually abused. So a lot of times when children are sexually abused, it happens in their own home, a lot of times in their own room and in their own bed. So what I was doing was when the abuser has been removed from the environment, going into the home, removing everything from that child's room, because usually when this is happening, you tend to focus on while something is happening to you. And so we would remove everything from the room, thus removing triggers. Thank you. Thus removing the triggers from that particular event in their life and redecorating their room so that they had a new safe place to be. And we've done more than 11, 12 different families' homes. In addition to that, a lot of times there were, additional furniture. Sometimes they needed transportation. Sometimes the abuser may have left but didn't actually get prosecuted, but he would take a lot of the stuff from the house. So we would raise money to replace those things and whatever else the children may have been missing from that parent or person leaving that environment. He's got to sit up.
When you say sometimes the abusers leave the home but don't get prosecuted, why is it that they have evidence, against a person who has been sexually abusing children, but they can't prosecute them?
From what I understand, I mean, when I went through this process with my own family, I was told time and time again that we were very rare. Most women, it's not that they can't prosecute, it's that they simply don't. Um, a lot of women, unfortunately, choose the what they consider the security of their husband paying the bills and taking care of them versus the security of their children. So a lot of children tell, but their mothers don't believe them. Or, unfortunately, in some of the more extreme dysfunctional cases, it's sort of been an offering, so to say, like women to keep their status, to keep their lifestyle, allow it to happen in order to maintain their life, and because they feel like they can't do anything else. Um, So unfortunately, and then those girls who actually do go through with the process, whether it's a dad, a stepdad, an uncle, a brother, they're usually the ones ostracized from their families because their mothers simply either don't want to admit it. Sometimes, always if something happens to your children, you think, well, what did I do wrong as a parent? And some of those women just don't want to deal with the feelings that come up, because they think that this is strictly a sexual act. So he's more attracted to a child than he is to me. I'm not a good wife to him, or there's something wrong with her. And so to believe their child, they have to deal with all of those other emotions, and they just don't do it. Statistically, we were very rare. Not only did I believe her, she didn't have to tell me, and I did everything I could to find him to make sure he was prosecuted.
I know earlier you were on, but you were on the phone. Could you please go back and just catch up the people who are on now while we got you on camera, so you can please just like tell your story again about how you had your children, what type of situation it was in, and then what happened, and then even up to where your ex-husband is at now.
Yeah. So I was married for about 10 years, and towards the end, the marriage was very strained. Just it was strained because he was extremely controlling and somewhat emotionally abusive. Um, However, I was trying to stay in that relationship for the sake of my children, because marriage meant a lot to me, and I really wanted to make sure I had exhausted all of my possibilities and options for raising my kids in a two-parent home. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been having so many kids. So at some point, I could tell energetically that there was something wrong. I didn't know what it was.
I have not
And
been hearing anything. I have to
Go ahead, Lamia.
okay.
call. You need to tell me what to do.
I didn't know what was wrong, but I knew something was wrong. And so I had convinced him to move back to where I had some family, because my plan was to leave, but he was really trying to counter that. Anyway, once uh, energetically it was so strong, I knew something was wrong. I couldn't figure out what it was, and finally one day I just said to him, look, I don't know what you've done, but whatever you've done, it can't be fixed. And he just, at that point, I would say energetically, he released me. He stopped holding on. He stopped doing all of the things to counter me being able to leave. And I mean, when I say I was trying to leave, there was probably 10 people that I knew that had copies of all of my kids' birth certificates, social security cards, and a change of clothes. I had them at all their houses. I
Okay, raise.
was really planning to leave. I had set up secret bank accounts. I was, filing tax money, that back taxes, and storing. So it was a plan to leave, which he knew. But at that moment when I said, whatever it is, I know something's going on or has happened, and you can't be fixed. And he just sort of conceded in that moment, and we all left immediately. Um, a few months later, I caught a glimpse of one of my daughters, coming out of the shower,
You guys
and
over
discovered
too late.
pregnant, just from the look of her body. And so I tricked her into taking a test, because up until that point, my children were homeschooled. And so she took the test, it came back positive. And I then called, I then called the police. And I made a report, told them I wanted to press charges. I gave all the information. And while the police were on their way is actually the first time that I had a dialogue with my daughter. And as soon as I started the dialogue, she broke down 100%. And, she could barely talk. And she felt like, it was her fault. And she had no idea that she was pregnant at that point. She was like 13. So I didn't bother to tell her. The police came, we did everything we needed to do. At that point, he had left the state, and they couldn't locate him. So we went through the process to terminate the pregnancy and gather DNA. And he started to contact me. And so he was contacting me because he wanted us to get back together and be a family. But because we didn't know where he was, I pretended like that was an option. And during that, I allowed the police to tap my phone and eventually got him to confess to me everything that had happened when it had started, everything. And so at that point, we had, DNA evidence, and we had a confession, but we still didn't know where he was. And so I continued the dialogue with him on almost a daily basis, and until one day he said to me, "I'm on my way in to get an ID. I'll call you right back." I asked him where he was, and I hung up and called the detective that had been working with us, and they picked him up about 30 minutes later at the address that he gave to put on his ID, and they extradited him back to where we were living. And then we proceeded to, take him to court. And, all of my children had to be prepped for court. Everybody had, and the kids did, amazingly well. All things considered. And he held out until we had to go to pre-trial. So he made all the kids actually take the stand in pre-trial. And, one of the things that I really wanted was to get him sentenced without sending every one of my kids back through the trauma of another court hearing. And so, it must be your sisters. So, finally, he agreed to a slew of statutory rape charges, and they gave him some consecutive life sentences, of which he only has to serve 9 years.
Wow.
And that is what he's doing now.
And you also said that he is up for a parole or good behavior.
Correct. He suffers from, several personality disorders. Bipolar we discovered while we were together, and some more things apparently were discovered, since he's been incarcerated. So yes, that is part of his personality, would be an ideal prisoner. And because he's served almost all of his sentence, he will be up for an early release.
And that's supposed to be happening in January.
February.
In February. Okay. So this is one of the reasons why there's an urgency to get into a home that's safe, correct?
Correct. For a long time, I allowed him to write as per the therapist instructions. However, his having any ability to physically locate us, in his mind, he's protecting, what is still his family, but he was sending people that were being released from prison that he was meeting to our house and driving by and sending him pictures and things like that. So being someplace where he doesn't know exactly where we are is very important.
Yes. I just want to say thank you for coming on, being brave enough to tell your story. How does this feel to see people coming in and donating right now to like you and your family, and things are about to change here in a couple more hours. We're gonna be blabbing all day, but we're gonna keep this GoFundMe going until we get to where we need to be to get you where you need to be. How does this feel right now?
It's an amazing feeling, and I'm not sure who was talking. I've been listening since you've been on, and someone was talking about, I don't even remember, but the point is, they're talking about being excellent receivers. And what I've realized in not during this whole time that I've been going through this so much, because when I give, the point is to give because I'm trying to help someone else. But it wasn't until people actually started to give to us that I realized that I have spent a lot of time, whether it was Christmas, last year, each one of my kids gave, one of their Christmas presents to somebody else because their mother's paycheck was going to show up after Christmas. And we didn't want them to wake up with nothing. So my focus has always been with the kids to give. If we have someone, we had an extra $100, we got gift cards and gave them to 2 other families that also had children. It's always been to my kids, you need to give. We have more. If we have extra, that's why on a weekly basis, we were donating food to families that needed help, even though they may not have been as large as ours. But I never really took the time to make sure that my children knew that it was, important to be a good receiver as well. Because that's something as a mom, I'm giving all the time without expecting anything in return. And so these people that are here that are giving to us is amazing to me. And I'm so thankful for it.
Yay! And we ain't done. We ain't done either. Now you can go get some chlorophyll. I want you to tell them, right. So even though she's laughing, a couple of days ago, Lameel let me know that she was in the ER. Sometimes she'll call me and say, this sucks. And I'll be like, yeah, I know. She was like, no, I'm in the emergency room. So can you tell us a little bit of like what happened last week with the your trip to the emergency room?
Yeah, so my daughter was flat ironing my hair. I felt I was dizzy. I couldn't stand up. I was holding a mirror because I was trying to watch her. And I couldn't even I didn't have the energy to hold the handheld mirror. So, at that point I tried laying down. It didn't work. And I immediately, I was like, I've got to go, and for me, that's a big deal because I don't like to worry the kids and leave them alone and that type of thing. So when I realized that I couldn't move and I didn't have the strength to do something as simple as hold a mirror, I had to go to the ER. And my heart was pounding so hard and so fast that if you were standing next to me, you could hear it. So when I got there, immediately they're doing, immediately they're doing, what is it? Is it an EKG? Whatever it is, where they're sticking all those things all over me and they're monitoring my heart and they're taking all of this because they couldn't figure out why my heart was beating so fast. After being there for a couple of hours and running all the tests, really all of that was just a side effect because my iron had taken a huge dip. A year and a half ago, I had an iron transfusion and everything had been great, but apparently I had the stress of everything and not eating and not staying hydrated really caused my iron levels to totally plummet because that is, as a natural healthcare practitioner, I try to maintain my iron levels through my diet versus the iron pills, which don't always make me feel so great. So with the transition and us being here and not being able to cook, I took a really big hit, and so they said my iron levels had dropped to where I once again need to have an iron infusion, which is not yet scheduled, but the liquid chlorophyll usually helps me kind of stabilize until I can get what it is that I need, and so that's what I'll be going to get tomorrow.
Yay. Now, also, how are y'all getting around right now? You had a van when you originally pulled into the hotel originally. Can you talk about what's up with the van?
Yeah, so a whole list of stuff. I mean, I parked it, it broke down, it wasn't starting. Called the guy that usually works on our cars, and the list of what it needed was more than what it was worth. So I thought it's not a big deal. And again, this happened as soon as we transitioned. So we're not going to be here that long. Let's just get into the house, and then I'll deal with the car situation, because my oldest daughter has a car that we had already paid off, and it was like, okay, it's not a big deal. Within another week or so, since we've been in this transition, her car has needed a starter. We had to replace all the fuses, a new battery. They just came out yesterday, and they're coming to us because, with a starter, once it wouldn't start. First, somebody told us, open the car and hit the starter, and it would turn over. So that worked a couple of times, but then it didn't work anymore, and so we had to actually have the mechanic come out to where we are and fix the car in the parking lot. And so, and trust that they would go for us and buy the part, give them the money, you had to go buy the part, come back. So they've done the starter, they've done all the fuses, they just another battery. And unfortunately, because she has a Chrysler, it's not like, you take a battery out and put a battery in. Chrysler's have a battery that is encased in something. So we couldn't just go get a battery. He came out yesterday and had to fix the connection from the batteries to the starter and something else. That was, $200. And now he's saying that it's still not turning over the way it's supposed to, because there's a ball joint issue and she needs a new fuel pump. And because her fuel pump is not under the back seat, it's actually behind the gas tank. That's going to cost another $1,000. So I've been putting the money into the car, because now that's the only car that we have. But it's still not turning over all the time, and needs another $1,000 worth of work.
And last month, how much was the total for the room?
It was about $2,000, because the room fluctuates between $60 or $62 a night to $72 a night, depending on the day of the week and how many days you buy at a time, things like that. So at about $65 average over 30 days, about $2,000.
And what's the process that you have to go through in order to secure the room? What's the journey been like? Have you just been able to go into your savings account and just pull out some savings? Have you cashed in your 401k, or what's been going on?
No, and I'm a firm believer in savings, but my two oldest children are in their 20s, and they don't have health insurance. So over the summer, my oldest daughter got sick, and just to be seen, we had to pay for the doctor's appointments, and then it turned out she needed a procedure done, and then she needed follow-up. And because there was some concern about her possibly hemorrhaging, that medication alone was $600 a bottle, and she had no insurance. So that was where my savings was, because I always tried to have at least 1 to 2 months worth of my living expenses as savings. But that's where it went over the summer. So there was no savings. I had some clients that larger clients that paid me on a monthly basis, and unfortunately I have not been paid. So with that not happening, and a few of my individual clients not paying, and the cost of, to $2,000 worth of hotel rooms, and we don't always have a kitchen. So to ensure that they're eating, I mean, we always have like a mini fridge and a microwave, but we don't always have a kitchen in the hotels because we have changed hotels for cleanliness, and because initially when we moved in, and I thought, oh, it's going to be for a week.
Can you hear me?
We were at a much nicer hotel, right? And because it was supposed to be really temporary and more money was coming in, and when I discovered that this was going to be a more permanent situation, I then moved us to something that was more affordable for a long period of time.
Daphne's trying to get her she's trying to get her audio stuff together. We're gonna keep turning it over. So go ahead. So basically, because this is my understanding that the lease of the house before you moved into the hotel, where were you staying?
I had a townhouse.
And how many bedrooms was it?
We had 4 bedrooms.
And the lease was up, right?
Correct.
And you wanted to move to another house that was at least 4 bedrooms, right?
Correct. It was a little larger.
And then did you find the house that you were about to move into?
Yes.
And then they told you it wasn't ready, or what?
Right. Initially, the house that I wanted was not ready. And I had already told my landlord, we were moving. And he had also, in that time period, decided that financially he was having some issues, and he wanted, since I've been here, he decided he wanted to sell the house. So there was no going back after being in the hotel and the house not being ready. There was no going back. He basically said he was having his own financial struggles, and literally to not pay November's rent, we left on the 30th of October. So on the 14th of November, he had a down payment on that house. Like he was done. He was getting rid of it. I think he goes to closing tomorrow on the house because he financially could not, for whatever other reason. So there was no going back. There was no extending the lease that I already had. So what I did have, though, was I've been approved for my new house and my down payment, and was expecting payments, incoming funds, so that we could then make the move. When that money didn't come in and it became a longer period of time, of course, then the money that would have been for my first month's rent someplace else became the money that we spent, to be here, and then another $1,000 in car expenses and so on.
Wow. What we're about to do is, Daphne, I have another 4 o'clock coming in, so I